Today we have a distillery that most people might not be familiar with, Bivrost, the world's most northern distillery. Now we've had a few expressions so far that have been a bit up and down.
It's been a mixed experience.
It has.
Some whiskies I'm very excited to try. This is not one of those whiskies.
Okay.
I don't know, it might be great.
The nose has been quite challenging for both of us so far throughout the range of whiskies that they've produced here. This is part of a limited range that all are kind of after a Nordic kind of history or story. This one is their peated version, limited release. And these have massive success in the secondary market, or have done previously.
Absolutely. This one is, what's it called? Muspelheim, or Muspelheim?
Muspelheim, sure.
Tomato. This is their limited edition, the Peated One. So the expressions we've had before, some of them had that sort of farmyardy.
Yeah, the nose has been the most consistent thing with the range so far, where it's had a kind of new makey, farmyardy, hay-like, unusual smell. Yeah. My experience so far is I've enjoyed some of them on the palate. I've certainly enjoyed them more than the nose, but you're finding them quite difficult, I suppose. But they've been quite inconsistent, really, because this is really an experimental range that they've produced. And we might see a more consistent product from Bivrost in years to come now that they're making a bit more whiskey. But they've tried loads of bonkers stuff. I mean, they're in the Arctic and they're growing barley where...
They've had a nightmare with, was it growing barley? They've really struggled with, especially really low yield.
Low yields, costing too much. They're working a lot with lots of local breweries as well, trying to use different yeast strains and so on and so forth. So they are trying to do something genuinely unique. And I think there's no denying it's been genuinely unique.
It's been an experience tasting it for sure.
The peated one, I think, will be the one in the range that I'm going to struggle with the most because I'm not a lover of peated whiskey. Hopefully, this is the one that convinces you and kind of turns you around.
Some of them have been good. There's been a couple of their expressions where it's like, this is very reminiscent of something like Kilchoman.
Yeah.
Where it's a real sort of farmyardy, smoky peatiness.
Yeah.
And I love Kilchoman. Kilchoman's one of probably my favourite Islay distillery.
Yeah.
Some of them have been a bit,
I
don't know, like the bad side of Campbelltown, where it's like, overly salinity and
I think that's a good way to compare them. I think what we've experienced so far is that the spirit can really be altered by the cask that it's used. I think there has been quite a diverse range on the palate from what they've produced so far. But let's have a little smell, have a little taste of this one. We'll see if the nose is typical from what we've struggled with so far.
Yeah, I'm hoping, with it being the peated one, I've heard from, bottlers, distilleries, whatever, that peat covers, a multitude of sins. So even if you've got a spirit that's not particularly great, if, fermentation has not been fantastic, whatever, if it's a peated whiskey, people who love peat will love the whiskey. Yeah. So I'm hoping this will bring it all together.
Yeah. I think it's quite cool. The story's good. They're storing a lot of their whiskey in a kind of old kind of army base in the top of Norway, which is quite interesting. And it's the most northern distillery in the world, which is quite cool to say you've tried, I suppose.
Yeah, I like distilleries that have a thing. So like, Port of Leith Distillery in Edinburgh, they are a vertical distillery. Yeah. And that's at least a thing.
It's a story to talk about, yeah. Yeah, 100%. Makes them unique. Yeah,
Strathern, their thing is they produce one barrel a week, I think it is. So it's like, at least that's a thing. Yeah. So being in the most northern, fair play.
Yeah. That's nobody's going to try and beat them, I don't think, up in the Arctic. So let's have a little smell. The nose is...
That's a lot of... What do you think? As somebody who doesn't love peated whiskey...
It is quite peaty.
It is. You'd hope so.
It's quite dirty. It's one of those things, it's quite confusing in the nose for me. It's quite vegetal, it's quite green again, but smoky.
It's almost verging on like a fishy smoke. In Lagavulin you get that like kipperiness to it. There's maybe an element of that to it.
I think I've got a kind of strange, almost like kind of smoked like asparagus on the nose, which I think is quite...
Yeah, is that vegetal?
It is, it's quite unusual.
Is it a nose that makes you want to taste?
Well, I struggle with peated whiskey, but it's certainly... I am intrigued by Bivrost, so I'll give it a go. It's bottled at 46%, which is great. It's a small batch, about 2,300 bottles-ish. So let's give it a little go. I am optimistic about this Bivrost.
I think it's going to be gross, but we'll give it a try anyway.
Cheers. I think that palate is actually really decent. It's quite a big peat. I think if you gave me that blind, I would have assumed it was a Scotch whisky.
It's got bags of flavour.
It actually does. It's not in line with the rest of the range.
Yeah, I'm just thinking through the sort of peated Islay distilleries. Has that flavour? Is that reminiscent of Bowmore? No. Is it Lafroig? No. Ardbeg? No. Bowmore? No. It's a very distinct smokiness for me.
It's quite. I mean, I would call that kind of medium to heavily peated as well on the palate. It's quite a lot for me. There's a touch of sweetness on the nose, but really the smoke is dominating. Which I think Scandinavian whiskies and peated whiskey is becoming a bit more trendy as well. Yeah. Certainly in Sweden they're doing a lot of peated stuff.
I think obviously, Islay's a mad island. Yeah. So it's very small, but it's got all these distilleries. But it's not got that many distilleries. Yeah. I feel like people who are into peated whiskey, they'll have tried the full range and they love them. If they're looking for something a little bit different, this is actually be quite a good option for them. We discussed quite a lot about kind of mainland peat and island peat. I don't know what kind of peat they'll be using in Norway, but it gives again, it is vegetal, it is green, but it's I think it's quite a pleasant smoke. Actually, I'm quite impressed, and it's better than I thought it was going to be. Okay. To be totally honest. Is it 46%? Do you feel it's a sort of sippable strength?
I would say so. You know that I'm inclined to add quite a lot of water to my whiskey, but at this strength, I actually think it's quite an easy sipper. It's not a dram that I would pull and have many whiskies of, but I could end a night on something like that. Yeah,
I think for me it's still quite rough around the edges. I think if I'm with friends who love Lagavulin and love Lafroig and love Ardbeg and they want something a bit different, this would be right up their street. Yeah. But 95% of everyone else,
it's going to be really challenging.
They're not going to enjoy this.
I think that's fair. But as I say, I think it's something that stands out from the rest of the range that they've done in this series. Yeah. I think it's probably one of the better palates we've had from this range as well. So, Bivrost, the most northern distillery in the world.
Yeah, it's not a bad whiskey. For me, for my personal taste, I feel it would benefit from some other element. So maybe like a sherry cask or something, just to balance out that.
That's fair. And it's probably quite young as well. We don't know the age of this, but it is a relatively new distillery. So you've got to think, if they're able to produce genuinely interesting peated spirit now, it can only get better in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if you're after that big, bold, peaty flavour, giving it extra years in the cask isn't necessarily going to equate to that anyway. But it's a decent whiskey if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah. Cheers. Nice to try it. Something a bit different.
Cheers.
If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Bevvy content. We want to hear what you think, your best whiskey experiences, the whiskies you want to try. It's a really exciting journey we're on, so make sure to join us. Download the Bevvy app on Google Play and App Store to keep track of your whiskey journey, connect with your whiskey friends, keep track of your favourites, anything you could ever want to do with whiskey, all in one place. It's the definitive whiskey companion.